think about AI like a car, where we all get cars. We can now move faster and further than we've ever been able to before. It enables me to live across the country from my family and yet remain connected. However, what is the cost if I treat this car as a way to avoid something else? In this case, walking. What's going to happen to my physical form? There's going to be a cost down the road. We've seen this. There's nothing new. We probably should all be walking more. But when we give up physical movement for the comfort and luxury of a car, then there is a cost to pay. I don't think AI is any different.
Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Lacey, and this is Carrying Fire, a podcast about the people who saw change coming, chose to learn instead of stall, and found a way to stay in the game. Real stories, honest conversations, and absolutely no hype. This is 100% a no hype zone. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Carrying Fire. I'm joined by a friend and a brilliant human being. He's the senior management of agent enablement at Zillow. Before that, he helped build the enablement function at multiple startups. He has a degree in radio, television, film, and a master's in church history, which is either the most random background, we all know it's not, in corporate L&D, or the most perfectly designed one, depending on how you look at it. A few months ago, he got on stage at Zillow's company-wide event and performed what he called a one-man AI magic show. Jimmy, I really wish I could see that. Complete with quick changes, hands-free AI calisthenics, and Connect 4. There's probably a case that we should talk about that at some point in this call. That's not a guy protecting the old way of doing things, which is why I have him here. That's a guy who figured out what he was carrying and decided to carry it into whatever comes next. This is Carrying Fire. Welcome, Jimmy Miller. I'm so glad to see you, and I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to see you too, Kyle. It's quite an introduction and all true, every word of it.
The best part about this, if you're listening, is that one thing that really annoys me when I'm going on stuff like this or being interviewed is when people have like really long intros where I'm just sitting there like staring at the person. And I wanted to do you justice, Jimmy, because you and I have known each other for a long time. Jimmy and I were connected through Lessonly, and where were you at the time?
I was working for a company called Outbound Engine. So that was a real estate, like automated digital marketing company. It was pretty cool. They went through an acquisition. I was there for a while. That's where I fell backwards into L&D, by the way. So we could explore that all you want, but my rise through that company and eventually leading to where I am today coincided with Lessonly being this small little startup LMS that just landed in my lap at the right time.
That's true. And we can't go forward without you talking about the presentation that you did at our user conference, which at the time was called Yellowship. So we picked Jimmy because Jimmy's topic was amazing. Jimmy, what was the topic?
So as you said, my background originally was radio, television, film, and I worked in radio for a few years. What I wanted to bring to the table was this idea of we are all working at companies that are fully distributed. We're all over the country. Oftentimes our sales and CS teams are on the phones. So what can people from radio bring to those professions? It's how do you keep your voice sounding great? Breathing, speaking, all these techniques. So I brought in a little bit of radio, but also a little bit of speech pathology because my mom's one of those. And we created this experience where I taught people where sound comes from and how to maximize what you sound like.
And I got to tell you, I'm pretty sure it was the top rated for the entire conference. And our keynote was Guy Raz.
What can I say? I saw you as the keynote and I was like, well, you're going to come correct. Like if I'm going to top out the reviews, we got to do something special because nobody knows who I am. I don't have a cool podcast yet.
Well, hey, Jimmy is about as cool as you get. So hear it from me for all of you listening. All right. I want to go to the beginning because I find it fascinating that you have a degree in radio, television, film, master's in church history, and you and I are talking about enablement. And this podcast in general is talking about how do you go through change in a meaningful way and really embrace that change as you evolve in your career or personal life. So talk me through how you made that transition and why it was important. Like what benefited you through going through the radio, television, and more of the church history that benefited you in the roles you've had over the past decade and even today?
Absolutely. It's a great question because it does on paper look at very strange, but it's a great
Yeah.
melding. The radio, TV, film side of it, I encourage everyone right now, if you're going to invest in an area of study, make it communication theory. The study of how to present information so that not only people can take it in and apply it and process it, but the entertainment side of it is how do you capture someone's attention and hold it? So in radio, I worked at a station in Dallas, KTCK, which is the ticket. It's the #1 station for men the ages 15 through 55. It's been that way for forever. And I went there and that was like my first master's experience because in radio, it's different than any other format. You got to fill 4 hours a day, come rain or shine, and you need new ideas every day. So it is like this crucible of creativity to where creativity becomes a discipline. And the only thing that matters is something called TSL, time spent listening. You better grab ears and you better hold them. I spent enough time in there to learn how to do that at a very high level. So that was piece one. How do you get people to pay attention to you at all? And understanding that that's not a reflection on you as a person. Your job is to get their attention, right? And there's a lot of ways to do that. The history side of it, there's just career pivots, right? So I did that for a while. Believe it or not, the stakes I learned were basically entertainment. Are people listening or not? Became too low for me. I want to actually make some sort of impact beyond creative ways to present the NFL draft, which I can do. But
Wait, what does that have to do with church history?
That's where we're getting. So I actually jumped. I jumped into working in full-time ministry at a church for a brief period. And that was while I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was already, volunteering quite a bit at this church. And what I learned was I do love the deep research side. So the original idea was when this was all happening, there was this explosion in sports analytics where you had the Sloan conference taking off and you had people applying really for the first time advanced mathematical concepts to understand physical activity. So my thought was, if we do it on a sports field, we can do this with human history as well. This is what leads me to church history. If you want a data set that is relatively consistent throughout 1,000 years of time, the church will give you people movement, demographics, land, money, all pretty standard across a large swath of land. What I didn't expect while I was going through all of that was spending a deep amount of time learning how to read and think very, very, very deeply at a very quick pace, contribute something new to a field of study, but then also think deeply about how people's beliefs inform their action. And so outside of theology, it's just life, how we think about things, how we perceive the world, how we understand what's happening around us will either inspire us to action or shut us down. So those would be those things.
I wasn't planning on getting in this deep right off the bat, but I think it's important. You and I are both actually, everyone listening and everybody on the face of the planet is experiencing this change with AI. And, I'm not sure that we will experience this type of change in the way we work in our generation, frankly. I think we had the internet and now we have AI, and maybe we will because AI is going to push us even farther. But I think what's important for what you just said is learning how to deeply think about a topic, which I think, if you read any of the recent research around people using AI, it's usually saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but it's, hey, people are, they are not retaining information. Everybody's moving 100 miles an hour, especially in software, which you and I have existed in for a while, right?
For sure.
How do you look back on your time studying and even what you did after, and how is it helping you manage these tools today? And I imagine that you probably talked about this at the Zillow conference as well, I'm guessing. I don't know what AI calisthenics is, but seems like it would be helpful.
Oh man, I just would love for everyone to see what I did. Maybe someday we'll make that happen.
Maybe we will.
I would say this. Think about AI like a car, where we all get cars. We can now move faster and further than we've ever been able to before. It enables me to live across the country from my family and yet remain connected. However, what is the cost if I treat this car as a way to avoid something else, in this case, walking, what's going to happen to my physical form? There's going to be a cost down the road. We've seen this. There's nothing new. We probably should all be walking more. But when we give up physical movement for the comfort and luxury of a car, then there is a cost to pay. I don't think AI is any different. Just like with any tool, you gain some utility and you might lose a skill unless you're thinking about how to use that tool and then how to maintain the others. And so with AI, we're in this moment right now. I'm not saying anything no one's never heard before, but we have these capabilities and we're all trying to scramble to figure out what to do with it. So from my end, thinking about the possibility while also knowing I need to retain some things that I could let go of because it's possible is in the forefront of my mind. So it's kind of like this, how do I hop in the car, but also make time to go run?
Well, how are you managing that? I haven't figured it out. I haven't figured out what to let go, what to make sure I'm refining. You know, I think a lot of people in our positions that are running teams and are in like this white collar thought leader strategy role where we're still tactical, but also strategic.
Yep.
Yeah, like I think all of us are struggling with this right now. Like we don't want to completely be replaced. And that I don't think that's the reality, but we also don't want to completely ignore the tool either.
Yeah. So, I mean, to speak to one fear of being replaced, like, you're not going to be deleted as a person. And humans have this unbelievable thinking historically, by the way, this unbelievable ability to persist. It bothers people in boardrooms when I say things like this, but I'm like, hey, name 3 people who were alive in 1885. You can even say presidents if you want, and you'll hear crickets. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the point that I'm making is, even if you're working for the biggest company in the world, even if you're at the CEO of that company, the likelihood people are going to remember your name in 150 years is extremely small. And generally, if they do remember your name, it's because you did something real bad. So with that in mind, like what brings me comfort is I don't need to remember all the people who came before me to recognize that we persisted and I exist in this time. It is unlikely that is going to change. So that sets the floor. And that brings me some level of comfort that, like, even if I'm not the one who figures it out, the ability for humans to persist in rapidly changing environments is historically relevant to me. But to your point of what am I doing? Much like setting aside time to go to the gym, if you're not setting aside time to read without interruption, then you're already letting your brain like atrophy. And I don't care what you're reading. It could be anything. I'll read highbrow, but I'll read real lowbrow stuff too. And it's just training your brain to focus on something. And I think that's going to be increasingly important.
So I have a great example. I'm reading 2 books right now. I'm reading Dopamine Kids, which is fascinating. And I'm also reading Empire of the Damned, which is a vampire book.
Heck yeah. So I have this rule that if people on my team suggest that I read something, I'll read it, no questions asked, which is how I ended up reading the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which is also...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, is it good? It's on my list.
It's a page turner. And then at the meantime, I'm also like revisiting After Virtue, which is over there, which is kind of a book about how when we don't all share a same system of morality, everything just becomes all made up anyway. It's a really good
very
book.
different, very broad.
Different. But you can live in both places, and both are training your brain to do something similar, which is just maintain focus and thought.
Okay, so read. Hey, everybody listening, you should read a book, please, for the sake of humanity. All of you should continue reading.
Please.
But personally for you, I think I've heard you mention that you are an aspiring polymath.
Yeah.
Which you're gonna have to talk through and give us some detail there. But how do you think about evolution of yourself? Right. And you can get into a little bit of what you're trying to become and all that stuff. But I find it I think I've talked to you. I don't think that's a new idea. I'm pretty sure you and I talked about that in Indianapolis at Yellowship, if I remember correctly. But can you describe for those listening what that means?
We oftentimes will throw around the phrase Renaissance man, which has a very specific definition, which is why I like to go polymath. The idea is really not just well-rounded, but if I know, like, every myth about someone asking what I want to ask ends in disaster. But truth be told, like, if a genie came to me and says, what do you want? The answer would be, I want to know all of it. And usually that ends with someone's head exploding in a movie. But like, I do. I want to know. Curiosity keeps me up at night, and not in a way that's made me fabulously wealthy, but in a way that makes me think, you know what? If I were going to recast the A Team as Muppets, who would they be? And thinking through it logically. They all have to fit in a van. That's step one. The idea is to really be insatiable and to dive deep. And so when you come up with something that you think could be helpful, or even just something that strikes your curiosity, it's diving down into it and learning as much as you can, and then figuring out where it fits. I get pegged oftentimes as someone who creates a lot of analogies and metaphors, and people wonder how I do it. And the answer is really stupid. The answer is I consume an unbelievable amount of media, books, music, TV, podcasts, and it's an affliction, but like it's those things that are swirling around in my head at all times that will then explode at times, both appropriate and inappropriate.
How do you keep track of all that? Like I take in a lot, but I have a hard time retaining any of it.
There is an element of it, I will admit, that is a gift, which is my brain just loves to hold on to things.
I think our common friend Ben Battaglia has the same affliction.
Yeah,
for what it's worth.
Let me tell you something. You think it would help you in all your relationships, specifically your marriage, but really it just makes you an annoyance in an argument. However,
wait, do you remember everything? Like I have a friend who
not
remembers everything.
Okay. I wish, but I remember quite a bit. And for me, it's mostly sound based. If I hear it, good luck getting it out. And that's definitely a piece of it. But I think it's truly the oldest thing ever, which is like, write it down. Write down what you learn, and you don't have to journal. Like I've got a bunch of journals and most of them make no sense. And I really hope that I'm not significant, because if I ever do something worth someone looking through my journals, they're going to hate it.
Wait. Do you think Thomas Jefferson thought that?
Yes. Oh, I think he was vain. I think he was vain enough to know.
I think he thought people are going to be reading this for the next 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But like for me, you know, a lot of it is just if I think of things and it strikes me as interesting, or it spawns an idea, I write it down and maybe I use it, maybe I don't. But not to jump into studies show that if you write something down, your idea, there is a cognitive function happening in your brain that will drive that idea into your long-term memory. And so knowing that, that's part of what drives the practice. But quite frankly, as a dad, like I also like my kids seeing that their dad is trying to be creative. Like I want my kids to know, just because we live in a computer age that's rapidly moving towards AI, that doesn't mean you can't make stuff. You can't create things with your hands. I mean, people will pejoratively call AI, and in some degrees it's kind of apt, it's funny, but like it's the world's most expensive copy machine. I get what they're saying, because it's going to intake all of these sources and then spit out something that's
pretty smart. It's a pretty smart copy machine. I'm not going to lie.
Agreed. But you know what it can't do? It can't currently do things in a physical space. And also, like, it can't bring in disparate ideas from disparate disciplines unless you've had the forethought to plug those things in.
For those of you watching, and I'll describe what's happening. Do you want to show what you built in your office?
Yeah. So oftentimes on my team, I talk to them about, you know, we're in this space, believe it or not, we're working remotely, is kind of around the same time as when we first discovered film cameras. And when we had film cameras, the first things we shot, there were two. Do you know what they were, Kyle?
No, I don't.
We would do documentary, which is where you get all those cool TikToks now of like people on the street in 1890, and they're just walking really fast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You also get silent films that are just stage plays. It wasn't until two French brothers were like, wait a second, what if we turn the camera upside down and then we can walk on the ceiling? And so the Lumiere Brothers invent special effects. And all of a sudden, film becomes a way where we can do things we could never do live. Zoom is the same way. And we're thinking right now about how do we create the office without realizing, wait, I'm in a box. So everything outside the box is unbeknownst to the audience, which is why oftentimes using physical space, like...
So he just lowered a pulley with a cup on it. Where the hell does that go? It's coming from the ceiling, but what?
It goes. So I have a set of pulleys that will drop things and move things. because I want them coming. This is all stagecraft. Kids do theater. It's really what it is. And that's honestly, when we talk about what my degree taught me and what like live performance has taught me,
Yeah.
it's recognizing, and this is comm theory too. The audience only knows what you are showing them. And also you can build magic with a very small budget if you're thinking outside the margins of what people can perceive and then showing them exactly what you want them to see. In this case, you did not see the series of pulleys or the rope that's pretty ugly. You just saw coffee drop down from the ceiling, which tickles people. I use it in meetings to drop in questions, because I'll say, hey, if you got a question, pop.
Are you serious?
But I'll also do a snail mail letter that I'll open live and be like, oh, I guess we can take them through the mail too. And people love it every time.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
It's so Pee-wee's Playhouse, but it's like, I could never do that in a meeting in person because you'd see it all. So
it's this concept that we talk about a lot in marketing, which is surprise and delight. And that's what you're doing, right? You're just making the mundane interesting, honestly. Like another meeting, I'm sitting in a podcast with Jimmy and he's got a pulley system to give him coffee. And I have no idea where the hell the pulley goes. I'm surprised he's taking coffee from his ceiling, but either way, it was interesting.
For all you know, I could tell a story about how actually there's a coffee bar above me on the next floor and we have a delivery system. And we could spin that story. And because of what you see, theater of the mind, people will go there because it's more fun to be there. And that's honestly, that's why it's important to like move outside of business books or even move outside of what AI companies are telling you to do with it. Like, I don't care what Claude wants me to do. I'm going to see what it can do because I'm going to Kool-Aid my way through it. Like,
yeah, sure. For those of you listening, we did not plan any of this. As Jimmy knows, we got on and I was a mess. Thank God he's level-headed and brought me back. But I think one thing that makes it so interesting is that the one thing that we can continue as humans is creativity and taste.
yes.
And what you're talking, and I believe that out of everybody that I know, you're one of the best at it. And a great example is what we've already talked about, which is if Jimmy were to have sent me his synopsis for Yellow Ship that was about breathing techniques for an L&D and enablement conference, and I did not know Jimmy and I had no context, I would have looked at that and been like, what the hell this doesn't make any sense. And you got there and you knocked it out of the park and people were surprised and delighted. And it was the top ranked session in the entire conference. And if you looked at it on paper, there's no way in hell I would have said that. But I think that's interesting in today's context because the one thing, well, we might listen to this 5 years later and I might be wrong. But right now, AI can't replace good taste or somebody that is continually evolving and taking in multiple different types of information. And I think that's what being a Renaissance man or polymath, whatever we want to call it, that's what innately makes us human. And that's your competitive advantage, frankly, is your context and your experiences.
Fully correct, right? Because oftentimes I talk a lot about how your AI is only as good as the data you put into it, right? So I used the car analogy earlier, but it's pretty apropos because if the AI is your car, the data you put into it is the gasoline. So if your data is bad, then your car's not going to go anywhere. But if your data is good and you have a lot of it, you can go fast and far. The added dimension is what data sources. And so to your point, unless an AI is pulling in all of the things I'm pulling in and weighting them the way I would weight them, it's never going to generate what I perceive as important. And that's the critical step. That means you can take it and use this tool without it replacing you, because I like the idea of taste, right? And I think we're about to enter, I mean, I hate to use entertainment as an example, but it's a really visible thing. I think we're about to see a lot of mistakes and we're going to enter into a very boring period of media because large production companies are going to use AI to create things that they think people like. But the problem is they don't know what people are going to like. So you're going to see a lot of retreads and you're going to be bored because you will no longer be surprised.
Well, your meeting thing is a great example. If I were to go to my friend Claude or Claudette or Claudio or whatever you want to call it, and I say, hey, can you give me some tips to make meetings more enjoyable on Zoom? I guarantee you, I will bet you money, and anybody can reach out to me to bet me on this. I guarantee you it won't come up with a makeshift pulley system that lowers a coffee cup to me in the middle of a meeting. But it's the best idea I've heard.
Thank you.
Right? But it's context, right? And if you as a human being keep putting these same contexts into your head, you know, for me as a CMO, it's just reading the same damn CMO stuff all the time with nothing new and not taking in any new information or creative ways to do stuff or looking at different angles of how people are selling hamburgers or how people are selling sweatshirts so that I can sell software better. That's a terrible example. You get what I'm saying? It's not like you're going to be the same person. You're not evolving. The same thing applies to AI. I think our CEO Alessio in the last earnings call said, agents without data context is like a Ferrari without fuel. And it's basically what it's the exact same damn thing. And the same thing applies to being a human being and inputting yourself with the right information. And I think that's what's so interesting about the polymath thing or the Renaissance man. It's just that you are taking in different types of information that you find enjoyable, and it's defining the way you look at your job or how you do your job.
And to dial it all the way back,
And you're the only one that's what makes it unique for you, right? That's what makes you Jimmy.
I tell my team, and I'll tell anyone this, like, change is constant. It's inevitable. And I make peace with it by knowing, like, I'm okay with just about any change as long as I'm included. And that helps me withstand it. And like, that's the standard I set for my team. When a reorg happens, it's like, don't freak out. Like, you were included. You're good. We'll figure this out together. But to your point about, like, what makes us human and what makes us better, I think it helps because as kids, we learn, at least this is a very American concept. So if you're listening in Europe, cool. If you're listening in Asia, also cool. But in America, you learn an easy way to be popular is to define yourself by things you don't like, which is to say something is not cool. And that is a very easy way to hold status by being against a lot of things and only for a few things. However, as someone who in middle school was on the very bottom of the social rung, shout out to everyone who joined me there, I decided to very early flip that around with unbridled enthusiasm for everything. And I volunteered with teenagers, even into adulthood. And this has given me a superpower to connect with people, because it's one thing to be cool by what you don't like, but it's a very inviting thing to be defined by the fact that you'll give anything a try and see why people like it. And that has led me in some very interesting rooms and have some very interesting experiences and change the way that I think. So I would say, putting it in this context, something that we have the power to do is to, and people say walk into something with an open mind. I say, no, don't walk in with an open mind. Walk in with an agenda. And the agenda is to figure out why people like this and why you should like it too. And if you don't like it, that's okay, right? I went to a D&D group because I was invited, and I played for a couple of hours. And what I learned was not for me. But I learned it was not for me because I kept doing things that were, quote, not in the spirit of the game, which was shorthand for you're not doing the mission. You're just goofing around this town asking questions that don't matter, which is true.
Well, I think that your curiosity in the way that you approach everything that you do actually helps with the evolution of you as a professional. And
Agreed.
well, let's use the most recent example, which is, a startup that you were at being acquired by a public company, and your role, like that's a pretty dramatic change of you moving into different leadership roles. And your curiosity about how to make things more interesting probably helps you through all those transitions. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
I mean, it makes it more interesting, maybe?
It does. I'm not the only one who's had this experience, I'm sure. I mean, you do startups, one, because it's fun and you get to do everything, but also it's kind of like a slot machine where, like, someday it's going to pay out. And I'm lucky enough that I joined one that did, and we were acquired by this large company. And there's this fear that things are going to change and they're going to be different and they're not going to be like they once were. That's a well-founded fear because it's true. But instead of being afraid of it, I just thought, well, how many times am I going to have the chance to join a publicly traded company at the employee level I'm at and be privy to the things in rooms and meetings that I'm going to get to observe? Rare. So let's treat it like almost like a documentary, like I'm going in here to film and watch and learn and observe. And that helps. I mean, not to tell you how to do it if you're going to be acquired by a large company, but you do need to determine what matters to you because change is inevitable. There are some things that you can protect. And I think that's really important. And I know this is a little off topic, but if you're listening, here's one thing you need to know. You determine who you are. You may believe it was determined when you were born. You may believe that you are capable of change and aspire to a higher plane of virtue. At the same time, you are deciding what's important to you and if that can exist within whatever new context you've been brought into. And so knowing that going in is going to help you find a position into wherever you find yourself.
Yeah. And it's protecting the things that you know are part of you and part of your value set as a leader. And the one thing that you and I have connected on, I know that Lessonly was a big part of trying to put this more out into the market, which is, we talked about servant leadership all the time at Lessonly. And I know this is something that you talk about, that you mimic, that you strive to be, right, as a servant leader. I think it also kind of helps with the change dynamic in any type of organization. But how do you define servant leader and how do you think about it today? It's probably, I don't know if it's changed for you, but I think it's important when it comes to leading teams through this type of change.
Yeah, well, now you're making me think like, how do we think about servant leadership in the context of AI being our like junior employee? And now that's going to send me into a total tailspin after this recording.
Well, you just
thanks.
write about it on LinkedIn and we can share it later.
Servant leadership, I mean, it's a super old model. And to me, it's very base. It's this idea that if you're rallying people together to do a job, give them direction based on their abilities and skills. But as a leader, be willing to take the worst of the jobs that nobody wants so that everyone else can thrive doing theirs. So this idea of we're going to be able to have everyone on the team maximize their skills, abilities, talents, desires to achieve a specific goal by doing my best to free them from the things that weigh them down. And the higher up I get in an organization, the more that's less doing it myself and coming up with ways strategically to get it done, whether with outside help or through a product, through software. But that's the general concept is how can I take away the things that weigh my team down physically, emotionally? That's the thought. Is that working there?
Man, I could talk to you for 3 hours. Sorry, everybody. But how have you balance that with AI? Because there's a lot of that stuff that AI can do now, but not do extremely well, decent enough. But like, how are you balancing that with this concept of servant leadership being, you taking some of the stuff from your team to do when your team might be able to do the stuff they don't like really easily now?
So I like to ask my team a lot, is the work you're doing satisfying? Is it fulfilling you? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. I try my best to help them feel like the work they're doing is satisfying to them. That's hard in a tech space because oftentimes you are doing a lot of work and at the end of the day, you have nothing to show for it. And that weighs you down. I also talk a lot about how on Zoom, we're spending all the emotional energy of being with people all day without receiving any of the benefit of actually being with people. So it's a weird thing that we're still working through as humans.
That is so true. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah.
That is so true.
We'll save it for another episode because I have a lot of thoughts on that. But in terms of how AI is changing my thoughts on servant leadership, sometimes it's me being brave enough to try things first so that I can help my team say, hey, you know what? We do have something that can take this thing off your plate that you don't like. Now, I am very strict Because of all the things we've talked about, I think that humans for now and probably for the foreseeable future are going to be the creative engines. If we are the creative engines, and that's something I demand from myself and people I work with, then I want you to prioritize that. So the things I want you to deprioritize are, copy editing is one thing. That's something AI can do pretty well. We've also started to figure out, what? Taking notes in meetings is good. I still like handwritten notes for myself. I understand the people that like to have the little meeting assistant jot them down. But what I do like is after a meeting, let's try this. Speak all of your notes into the microphone, have a recording, submit it up to the AI of your choice, and then have it organize that into an actionable item list. Those kind of things, like my experimentation with those things, allow me to prescribe some to my team to then remove, like I said, those burdens from their work. But the whole idea still remains the same. The goal is, how can I free you up from the things you don't like to do more of the things you do like?
Love it. The biggest issue with talking to Jimmy is that you want to talk to Jimmy for much longer than the time allotted to talk to Jimmy. So we're going to have you back at some point, but I have one last question for you. Well, let's say you're the ghost of Jimmy future and you come back, and what advice are you going to give church history Jimmy with everything, with AI coming and everything, if you think back?
I will tell him it is still worth it to learn Latin.
Is it really?
Yes.
Like, really?
Yes. If you're watching, learn Latin. It's really hard. It's deeply satisfying. I, in all honesty, I would say what you are learning is good, but how you are training your brain to learn, think, process, and write is the thing that's going to drive the next 20 years of your life.
And I would confirm that that is true for sure. And so one thing that I took, there's a lot of things that I take away from this conversation, but the main one is when the fire inside of us is more about how do you look at fear as opportunity? And I don't think that I could have put it any better myself. It's like, if you have fear of something, fear of change, fear of anything in your life, you have to look at it in terms of evolving as a person and the opportunity that it affords you. I just wrote about this. One of my favorite lyrics from any song is from a band called Sleeping at Last, which was a Chicago-based band. I don't know if they're probably still playing, but one of my favorite bands in college. And they have a line in a song, and it's, "We are all hunters hunting for something to make us feel okay." And the most important thing that you can do is embrace the fear that we all feel in, of course, different volumes, and look at it as more of an opportunity to not feel okay, but feel great. And I think a lot of these tools that we have and a lot of the change that software is going through is a great opportunity for everybody to kind of look at what's happening, to look for opportunity. How do you evolve as a professional, as a person? And also go check out what Jimmy writes in videos. And like, if anybody is to go find you, where are they going to go? Where should they go?
So you can
Or James.
You can
LinkedIn.
find me as James on LinkedIn, because that's actually, boy, why am I saying this out loud on a podcast? But here we are. That's my manual filter, because if you call me James, I know you don't know me. But if you call me Jimmy, I know you know. It's been working for a long time, and I may have just spoiled the secret.
Should I go by Kai? I should go by Kai with my friends. So
It does make me hard to find, but find me on LinkedIn and stay tuned.
James Miller on LinkedIn.
James Miller. I've got some projects spinning up that will get announced out there. There's some consulting that I do on the side. I mean, I still work for summer camps on the side, which is an absolute blast and a good use of my creative brain. And that's kind of expanding.
And that's another thing we forgot to talk about was your summer camp stuff. So we have to have you back.
I mean, in short,
can you give a little bit of a teaser so people can wait for the next one?
So early in my career, I worked at a summer camp where my job was called Fun Department. And that sounds silly, but it was deeply
But
serious.
what type of camp, though? I think this is important. Who
It's
is
a
going to this camp?
Boutique sports and outdoors adventure camp for children of wealthy people is a good way to put it. So the kids having a good time was extremely
Boutique.
important. And my job was to quality control every single possible event and also design them so that we can maximize the fun quotient. To put it simply, I need to make sure every kid's having the best time of their life. And when you do that, and then you dedicate the rest of your life to answering that question, you become really good at it. So, for example, very recently, a camp came to me and said, hey, our kids don't think that kitchen raids are fun anymore. And so I sat down, learned a lot about it, and then developed, based on heist movies, a heist version of a kitchen raid where you had to do a multi-step break into office, getting codes, experience. And guess what? Great success, super fun. So I do stuff like that on the side. But if you want to find me, just TBD.
I'm just standing. For those of you that aren't watching, I'm just standing here amazed. That's brilliant. All right, Jimmy, thank you for joining me at Carrying Fire. I am actually looking forward to us scheduling the next episode so that we can talk again. But much appreciated, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. If you want to keep learning, make sure you subscribe and share. And you can also sign up for my newsletter, Revenue Diaries, through the link in the show notes. This podcast is produced in partnership with Share Your Genius. If you're looking for a full-service production partner who are experts, and believe me, they are, in content strategy, talk to Rachel at Share Your Genius and tell her I sent you. This is also brought to you by Docebo. If your organization is serious about AI-powered learning and building a workforce that can actually keep up with all the changes happening, check us out at docebo.com, DOCEBO.com.